Welcome back to Civil Wars. I'm William Spaniel, and this lecture is on mediation of civil conflict. Recall that last time we looked at what happens when the government is unsure about whether the rebel group is weak or strong, and we found out that if the rebel group is very likely to be weak, then the government is going to adopt an aggressive bargaining position. It's going to make small offers to the rebel group under the assumption that the rebel group is likely to accept those offers precisely because that rebel group is likely to be weak. However, this comes at a risk for the government, and the risk is that the rebel group might actually be strong. And if the rebel group is actually strong, then that strong rebel group is going to look at the small offer and think, you know what, we can do better if we fight a war. In expectation, we will receive more from war, so we are going to reject this small offer and fight a war instead. And this, of course, is bad for the government because it involves the costs of conflict. So to summarize that, we know that with complete information, when the parties know everything that's important to know about a conflict, we see that the parties will settle the conflict peacefully. Whereas if there is incomplete information, the parties don't know something that's important about the conflict, then we see that war is possible. And what I want to do now, over the course of 3 short lectures, is talk about the implications of that theoretical model. So what does that theoretical model tell us about mediation? That's what we're doing here. What does it tell us about our ability to predict the outbreak of war? And what does it tell us about how changes to the black market, specifically AK-47 prices, how does that affect the outbreak of war? So let's start off with mediation. It's true that warring parties often go to third-party mediators to try to resolve their conflicts. So I'm filming this in January of 2014. If you're following the news now, you might have heard that there is some mediation going on involving the Syrian civil war, where the warring factions in Syria are actually right now discussing with third-party mediators, including the United States, about a peace treaty for that war. What might those mediators actually be doing, though, to convince the parties to stop fighting? Well, remember that if war occurs because of uncertainty, then war is not going to occur when there is no uncertainty. Again, with complete information, we see the parties settling conflicts and not fighting wars. With uncertainty, we see them fighting wars. So one thing that a mediator might be able to do is provide intelligence to the warring factions that those factions do not have. So suppose a mediator, a big strong state like the United States, which has a really good intelligence organization and the ability to actually see what's going on in a conflict, perhaps better than those in the conflict actually are seeing it, or perhaps the United States sees something in particular that the rebel group and the government in Syria are missing out on. So the mediator has some sort of intelligence that the warring parties do not, and the warring parties trust that this mediator has some sort of unbiased interest in resolving the conflict, that the mediator doesn't want the war to continue because of all the humanitarian crisis or something like that. So the mediator actually has incentive to be honest here. Well, if the mediator shares the information with the parties, that is going to potentially resolve the informational problem. Again, if you have complete information, you will settle the war. So if the mediator holds the piece of information which was lacking, which caused the war in the first place, then that mediator should be able to resolve the conflict by saying, here is the information, you now have complete information, I should say, so you can now settle it. You can find that bargaining range, you can find a mutually preferable settlement that leaves both sides better off to war, and you can reach peace. So that's one way a mediator can help out a warring faction or a warring party. There are other reasons that a mediator might also be effective, but we're not going to be covering them here because we are looking at implications of that first theoretical model that we covered with incomplete information. However, we will discuss mediators at another time and see what else mediators might be able to do to resolve a war. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time when we talk about our ability to predict the outbreak of wars. Take care.